guys, it's Erica Galinas of the Mike McCaddy Group at Century 21 Affiliated, here with our Ask the Agent segment. I have shown tons and tons of houses, all different kinds of houses in my career, and there's a couple things that you can kind of use. I'm calling them the 5 secret places to look when you go look at a house. Most sellers are honest. Most problems are pretty apparent, or they will come up in home inspection. But if you're trying to get an idea of, how well the house has been taken care of, if there's any hidden problems, there's 5 things that you can kind of check to see, if, again, I don't want to say any sellers are dishonest, but certainly things maybe they don't know about or things that they're not required to disclose. These are kind of 5 things you can kind of keep an eye on to see, whether or not maybe there's something else going on, maybe something to look deeper into. So the first one, water is the enemy of houses, basically. That's the entire idea of building a house, is a battle against water intrusion. So in this area, obviously what we're worried about is basement water. A lot of times basement water is obvious. If they've gotten water, you can tell because it smells weird, or because they strangely don't have anything sitting directly on the floor, or sometimes there's obvious water stains, that kind of thing. But sometimes it's a little harder to tell whether or not basement water has, been in the house, either now or 50 years ago or something like that. So what you can do, and I do this every time I look at a house that has both a finished and an unfinished basement, is you look for any exposed wood in the basement. So if you have just kind of a big empty block basement, it's a little bit hard to check. We'll talk a little bit about how you can check for that. But if you have a finished basement or partially finished basement, or a basement that was finished 50 years ago and is a little tired but still technically finished, what you want to do is look for any wood attached to the floor in the basement. So you could have a beautifully finished basement, but a lot of times, there's a utility room behind all that beautiful finishedness where, where the furnace is, where there's exposed wood studding. A lot of times there's, a little closet under the stairs. Most people don't finish the inside of that closet because, who cares? It's just your Christmas decorations. So there is exposed studding underneath that area. So there'll be a sill plate and then the, vertical ones. If you look at the bottom of those pieces, there might be, a little black water line, maybe a little white one, just a little indication that at some point there was water in this basement. A lot of times, what happens is 2 things. One is that at some point their hot water heater exploded and dripped water all over. It happened once, they replaced it, there's no problem. The second thing that can happen is that there was water in the basement, but before these people own the house. Because again, the reason why we're checking this wood is because it's been around forever, so it's going to show us past signs of stuff that has gone on. Kind of like tree rings, but in this case 2x4s. So the Indiana State Sales Disclosure has a question on there: are there any moisture problems in basement, crawl space, etc.? And it says yes, no, I don't know. It might say no, but you can see that little bit on the wood there. It's worth a question, because like I said, either 2 things happen: hot water heater overflowed, or it happened before they owned the house, in which case they won't know anything about it, but they'll be able to tell you, we've lived here for 15 years, there's never been any water, or something like that. Third option is that they're lying to you, but again, that's very rare. The other place you can check if you have like a fully finished basement with like no visible wood is usually, in most cases, the furnace and the hot water heater are going to be on bricks or blocks of some kind, because they rarely sit right on the floor. It has to do with like insulation and being in contact with the bare concrete. You can sometimes look at those bricks and look for the same thing. Does it look like these bricks were ever wet? Is there a little, even line across the face of all the bricks that indicates maybe there's some water? That's a place you can check in a house that is fully finished, no visible wood or anything like that. Check the bottom, the base of that furnace and the hot water heater. Second thing, and this also has to do basically with water, although it's a structural issue as well. Outside of the house. Everybody looks outside the house. You always, ooh, look at the deck. Oh, look at the, the lights in the front. When you take a walk around the house, take one where you look at it and get the vibe and look how cool it is. Then take one and look at the base of the house. Look at that foundation. Most houses are going to have about, I don't know, a foot of exposed block or brick or, poured concrete. You can see there's always going to be some little cracks. There's always going to be some, particularly a house that's 50 years old, it's going to have settling marks. But you should be able to see whether or not there's big, huge 1/4-inch gaps between the block, or there's some kind of very suspicious crack on the poured concrete foundation that doesn't seem to go along with any, seam or anything like that. Just something a little weird. The other thing is when you have a brick house, in addition to that foot at the bottom, look at the brick, because you'll be able to see, bricks have a very uniform, pattern. You will be able to see if a brick repair has been made, or God forbid, if brick is pulling apart on the corners of the house, which happens sometimes. You'll be able to see, this nice uniform line suddenly gets a lot bigger, or this nice uniform line, suddenly gets a lot darker because the grout is, or the mortar is missing between the bricks or something like that. That's definitely something you want to ask about. The other spot you can look at outside when you're doing that walk around is the window wells. A lot of houses have, the basement window, and then there's a window well right there. And some of them are really deep because they're egress windows. Some of them are just kind of there because it's an older house and there's nothing, fancy about it. But what you're looking for, again, is places for water to have gotten into the house. You're looking at, is there a bunch of cracks in that area? Does it look like the windows have been replaced at some point? If so, why? Is there deterioration of the brick right there? So pay attention to those window wells when you do that outside walk, just to get an idea of water and potential foundation problems. Number 3, and this is more applicable to houses, new construction but already built, so basically nobody's ever lived there but it's all ready to go, or flips. And this is really an important one if you're looking at a house that somebody has flipped, whether it's an investor flipper or somebody who redid their grandpa's house real quick to get it on the market. We're talking about caulk. Caulk costs what, $6, takes 20 seconds to install, something like that. Super easy, the most basic thing. So what you're going to do is you're going to go in this house and you're going to see all the new trim and the door frames and everything like that, and you're going to look to see if in between the trim and the wall that they have put a nice little line of caulk. It is not structural. It is nothing more than a cosmetic issue. I mean, you yourself could buy a bottle of caulk and caulk your seams all day, but particularly with an investor flipper, but also, like I said, in these kind of, quickie remodels, what you're looking for, if that caulk is missing, a lot of times it means that maybe, again, all sellers tell the truth, but maybe they were rushed when they did it, or they were not paying attention to details. And that can indicate other issues with maybe when they did this quick electrical repair, they didn't quite, tape off their caps enough, or when they did this plumbing thing, they took a shortcut and used a pipe that was too narrow or something like that. It can be a very good shorthand way, particularly with a flip, to see, the level of detail that they have put into the house. Again, caulk is cheap, it's fast to do. If they have skipped that step, it may be an indication that you want to look a little bit more closely, because that means there may be other steps that they have skipped. Number 4, again, water is the enemy. Every house is about keeping water out of your life and your possessions. This one is more outside, again, as part of that outside walk. Most people don't really want a yard that floods, even if it doesn't go into the house or anything like that. If you have a 1/4 acre lot or a 1/3 of an acre lot, you would probably want to be able to use all of that lot and put a swing set in the back, or be a place for a shed, or you want to put a pool or something like that. This happened to me when I bought my house. It's not a big deal because it's in the front of the house by the sidewalk far away, but my sidewalk floods in rain. It's not, again, not a big deal. It's not like I'm jogging every day or anything like that, but it's kind of a bummer, and it looks lousy, and it's hard to, keep the sidewalk looking nice. I didn't know about that because I bought the house in July when it hadn't rained for like 6 months, maybe not that much, but you know what I mean. Obviously, if you're looking in July, if you're looking in August, if you're looking in Arizona or something like that, you're not going to be able to tell every day when it hasn't rained what the yard is going to be. Is it going to be swampy? Is it going to be yucky? That kind of thing. So what you can do is when you stand in the yard or look at different places in the yard, look to see what's growing there. Not that it has to be a perfect, manicured golf course lawn, but if there are a lot of areas that are completely dead and have creeping Charlie, which is kind of that viney stuff that spreads, it spreads like crazy, it's so bad. Creeping Charlie, sometimes you'll see a lot, there'll be branches or something in the back of the yard, and they're all very dark as if they're wet, even though it hasn't rained in 3 weeks. Those are signs that during a heavy rain, that half of your backyard is going to be, yucky and not flooded, maybe not standing water, but just not usable. And if you have dogs or you have kids or you want to go use your backyard, you don't necessarily want it to be all swampy all the time, even when it hasn't rained in 2 months. So I would definitely say that that's one of the things you can look for. If it comes up, just ask the sellers. Be like, hey, do you guys have like marshy, swampy? Or if it's going to rain in 2 days, maybe do a second showing and go walk around the backyard and make sure it's not all gross. The other thing in terms of water, is to check the windows. So, you know, you'll beautifully staged home, or a cruddy home, I guess, but you know, the curtains are down or the blinds are down. You know, pull those back and look in the window wells. Make sure that there's not any brown spots. Make sure there's not any super fresh paint that looks like it was there just to patch up some peeling paint because it had gotten wet. I mean, every window, you know, everybody leaves a window every once in a while open, and you know, you get the little water spots in there, which stinks. Not a big deal. But if you can see where it looks like the wood might be kind of cruddy, where it looks like, you know, they've done, like I said, a quickie, you know, touch-up job for the paint, ask about that. Because if your windows are letting in water, that can be a problem and means that the windows need to be replaced. Again, not unusual if you can tell the windows are 50 years old, but if they look newer or they're a replacement job that was done kind of cruddy, you'll be able to see those watermarks right there. The last one is kind of, I mean, I don't know, it's just like vibes, kind of, you just look at something, you're like, that's not right. If you see a rug on the floor that seems to be in a very strange place, or maybe oddly shaped for the area, or kind of doesn't make any sense, everybody's got different taste, but it kind of doesn't make any sense, maybe lift the rug up and see what's underneath it, because there might be damage to the floor. There might be a big stain, you know, from a pet or something like that. You can move a rug. It's not a big deal. You shouldn't walk around and move all the rugs. But if you see one that's kind of maybe lift it up and just see what's underneath. I know I've caught, you know, 3 or 4 times when they've put a rug over a problem that apparently they were just going to, you know, move out and leave us with. So, if you see a rug in a weird place, maybe pick it up. I do not advocate anybody ever touching anything on the walls, like decorations, photos. I will not say that if you see one that's kind of in a weird place, particularly since decorating styles are so weird, I am not saying that you should move that picture and just make sure there isn't something weird behind it, because that would not be right and you shouldn't be touching their pictures. But it's something to keep aware of. Maybe something, you know, if you see something, you talk to the home inspector and be like, hey, why don't you check behind that picture, because that's super weird. It's 2 inches away from a light switch and it's at knee height. Like, maybe there's something going on there. So that wraps up. So there's the big 5 things. Again, most of them have to do with water, because water is the #1 enemy at all times in terms of housing. So that basement water, you know, look at the very bottom to see if you can find any little, you know, just little hints. Make sure you ask about them. Outside, look at the foundation. You're looking for, you know, weird cracks in the block, or maybe big repairs, brick that's peeling away, or brick that has been repaired because it was peeling away. Backyard grass, make sure it's not swampland at all times. Check the window wells inside and out to make sure there's no weird signs of water and everything like that. The caulk, eye for detail. If you're going to buy a flipped house, you're going to want to have someone who's paying attention to those things. Look for the caulk in those seams and, you know, make sure that it's there. If it's not, keep an eye out for other stuff. And then, like I said, just weird, strange decorative items. Don't move anybody's furniture. Don't do anything like that. But if you see a rug that's kind of, lift up the rug and see what's underneath. It's not the end of the world. Just put it back where you found it. I just want to say that these problems, like if you find these problems, they are not in any way an indication that you should not buy the house. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the house. It doesn't mean, you know, if there's a little bit of white water spot on the bottom of the wood under the stairs, doesn't mean the basement floods all the time. But what you should do is have your agent ask the listing agent, hey, they noticed this. Is there any issue with this? You know, and then they say yes, or they say no, or they say yes, but it was 50 years ago, or whatever the answer is. But it will give you a heads up when you go to do your home inspection, or perhaps push you to have a home inspection if you're on the fence about it. It does not mean that you should absolutely, you know, forget the house. If you don't like it, yeah, it doesn't matter. But if you like the house, but there's no caulk in the seams, don't blow the deal. You know, don't move on if you really like the house. Like I said, it's just worth some extra scrutiny. So that's what I got today, 5 secrets to look for on showings. If you have any questions about any of this, selling, buying anywhere in this Northwest Indiana, please call or text me anytime, 219-765-2062. You can also email me at hsbyerica@gmail.com. That stands for Home Sales by Erica. Comment down below. I check those all the time. Send me a message via Facebook. Totally fine. I'm happy to help. Thanks, guys, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.